When we were younger, life was full of noise. The house was rarely quiet. Children running, phones ringing, friends dropping by without notice. We were always doing, always giving, always saying yes. That was the rhythm back then. And we thought that was what love looked like, being needed all the time. But as the years pass, something starts to shift. The phone rings less. The house is quieter. And for the first time, that quiet does not feel lonely. It feels like peace. You may have noticed it yourself. You're not as eager to go out. You're not rushing to host visitors. You find comfort in your own space. And maybe, just maybe, you have started to feel guilty about that. You wonder, have I changed too much? Have I become distant? But what if I told you that this change is not a loss? It is growth? That choosing solitude, especially in this season of life, might just be the most loving and powerful thing you have ever done for yourself? You're not becoming cold. You're becoming clear. And today, I want to talk with you, not at you, about this quiet shift, what it means, why it matters, and why, as women, we do not need to apologize for needing space, for needing stillness, or for choosing peace over performance. You're not alone in this. In fact, you're finally coming home to yourself. And that is something worth celebrating. 1. We bloom differently with time. There is a quiet truth about life that no one really talks about, at least not when we are young. It is this: the way we connect with others, the way we show up in relationships, changes as we age. And that change is not something to be ashamed of. It is something to understand, to honor, and maybe even to welcome. When we were in our 20s, 30s, and even 40s, our lives revolved around people. We planned birthday parties, holiday dinners, and family reunions. We volunteered at school, showed up for friends in need, and made sure the house was always ready for company. If a neighbor stopped by unannounced, we smiled, brewed coffee, and made room. That was the kind of women we were: strong, reliable, warm, and deeply involved in the lives around us. But then, life happened. Children grew up and moved out. Some of us lost spouses, parents, or lifelong friends. Our energy shifted. Our priorities did too. And slowly, without anyone telling us it was okay, we started to want something different. Not because we were bitter, not because we stopped loving people, but because we began to crave peace more than we craved performance. We started to feel something deep and quiet inside us, something saying, "You have done enough for others. Now it is time to come home to yourself." Maybe you have felt that pull too. Maybe these days you find yourself sitting in your favorite chair by the window, enjoying a cup of tea without a single interruption. And it feels good. Maybe you skip the big gatherings, not because you are antisocial, but because you are tired of small talk and loud rooms. Maybe you do not answer every phone call anymore, not out of rudeness, but because silence feels softer than conversation. And maybe, just maybe, you have started to feel a little guilty about all that. Let me be the one to say this out loud. There is no guilt in choosing peace. There is no shame in needing more space. As women, we have spent decades caring for everyone else. We were the center of the home. We were the ones who remembered birthdays, baked the casseroles, sent thank you cards, and listened when others needed to cry. That is not something we should ever regret. It is something to be proud of. But now, in this stage of life, the roles change. We are not meant to do everything anymore. We are not meant to fill every calendar, host every dinner, or hold up every relationship. We are meant to rest, to reflect, to let go of what no longer fits. That might mean fewer visits and fewer obligations. It might mean closing the door more often and sitting with ourselves instead. That is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of wisdom. Think about how flowers bloom. Some open boldly, right away, soaking up the sun. Others take their time. They grow in quieter seasons, in cooler air, with less attention. They are no less beautiful, just different. The same is true of us. There is a quiet kind of blooming that happens in later life. It is not loud or flashy. It does not need applause. It just needs space. And in that space, we begin to reconnect with a part of ourselves that has waited patiently in the background for decades. You might notice that you enjoy your own company now more than ever. You read more. You write in your journal. You tend to your garden or your kitchen or your faith. You are no longer rushing to be everywhere or please everyone. You're learning, perhaps for the first time, that your time belongs to you. And that is not selfish. That is sacred. We do not bloom the same way at 70 as we did at 30, but that does not make the season less meaningful. If anything, it makes it more meaningful. Because every moment is chosen. Every visit, every call, every conversation, it all becomes more intentional. You are no longer living to meet others' expectations. You are living to meet your own peace. So, if you have been feeling distant or unsure, if you have wondered whether your need for solitude is strange or wrong, I want you to hear this clearly. You are not withdrawing. You are transforming. This is the part of life where clarity replaces noise, where peace replaces pressure, where you finally get to ask yourself, not, what do they need from me? But, what do I need from myself? And what a beautiful question that is. 2. When saying no becomes a kindness. There comes a time in a woman's life when her home stops being a gathering place and starts becoming a sanctuary. That change does not always come with an announcement. It happens slowly, almost quietly. One day, you wake up and realize you no longer enjoy the hustle of getting ready for company. The idea of someone dropping by, even a close friend or neighbor, feels less exciting and more exhausting. And for many of us, that realization brings a heavy question. What happened to me? Nothing happened to you, my dear. You have simply grown into a new kind of wisdom. A wisdom that says, not every open door needs to stay open forever. We were raised in a time when being a good hostess was part of being a good woman. We were taught that a tidy house, a warm smile, and a pot of coffee were signs of love. And for many years they were. We welcomed people in, not just into our homes, but into our time, our energy, our lives. But things are different now. Our days are slower. Our energy is more precious. Our bodies are not what they used to be, and neither are our boundaries. That is not failure. That is nature. That is truth. And it is okay to honor that. Saying no is not a rejection of others. It is a kind gesture to yourself. Think about it this way. Every yes you give away now comes with a cost. It takes from your rest. It pulls from your peace. It disrupts the rhythm you have worked so hard to create. So when you say, I would rather not have visitors today, you are not being rude. You are being honest. And honest women are peaceful women. Let me tell you a story. My friend Eleanor is 75. She is the kind of woman who used to host Sunday dinners for 12 people without blinking. Her house was full of laughter, plates clinking, kids running around. But over the last few years, she has slowed down. Her joints ache more. Her nights are lighter. And she finds that even a simple visit can leave her feeling drained for days. At first, she tried to push through. She kept saying yes, kept letting people in. But she noticed something. She was becoming resentful. Not because she did not love her friends, but because she was betraying her own need for quiet. So she made a decision. Now, when friends ask to visit, she politely says, I love you, but let's meet for coffee at the cafe instead. She keeps her home for herself for naps in the afternoon, for reading by the fire, for simply being. And the result? She is happier. Her friendships are still there, but her stress is not. That is the power of a boundary made with love. You may be at that same point now, and if so, I want you to hear this. You do not have to explain your boundaries to anyone who respects you. Not every visit is necessary. Not every invitation must be accepted. Not every relationship needs to be maintained at the same level forever. We grow, we change, and the kind of connection we crave changes too. Maybe you would rather meet someone for a quiet walk than invite them in. Maybe you would rather talk on the phone once a week than have them over every Sunday. That is okay. That is more than okay. That is how you protect your health, emotional, physical, and spiritual. And here is something else I want to say out loud, because not many people do. Hosting takes work. It takes emotional energy. It takes physical strength. It takes hours of preparation and even more hours of recovery. And if your body or your heart is telling you, this is too much, believe it. Listen to it. That voice inside you is not weakness. It is wisdom. There is no medal for being the most available woman in the room. There is no trophy for exhausting yourself in the name of hospitality. But there is peace in choosing what serves your soul. So let this be your gentle permission. You can love people deeply and still say no to things that drain you. You can care for your friends without opening your door every time they knock. You can honor your life by protecting your space. Because here is the beautiful truth. Your home is not just a place. It is your energy, your heart, your sanctuary. And not everyone, not everything is meant to come inside. Let that truth settle deep in your spirit. Let it remind you that you have earned the right to choose peace, and that sometimes saying no is not selfish. Sometimes it is sacred. 3. When small talk becomes heavy. There is something that happens as we grow older, especially for women. We begin to crave conversations that feel real, not just polite, not just surface, and certainly not draining. There was a time when we could chat for hours, jumping from one topic to another without thinking twice. We had energy to spare. We laughed, we listened, we leaned in, even when the conversation turned gossipy or stressful. That is just how things were. We gave our attention to everyone who wanted it, even when it cost us our peace. But now, things feel different. You might find yourself avoiding group gatherings. You might sit in a circle of women, hear the same stories again, the same complaints, and silently wonder, why am I even here? Not out of judgment, but because you feel how much energy those conversations take from you. Not all words lift us up. Some simply wear us down. And the truth is, small talk can become heavy when your spirit is tired. Let me tell you about my neighbor, Marian. She is 78 years old, and for most of her life, she was the social glue of her church group. If someone needed to vent, they called Marian. If a friend was going through a divorce or a death in the family, Marian was the one who brought over soup and stayed to listen. But lately, Marian has changed. One afternoon, she told me, I just cannot sit around and listen to everyone complain anymore. It hurts my heart. I carry it all home with me, and I cannot sleep afterward. She looked me right in the eye and said, I miss real conversation. Not the kind where we all try to top each other's problems, but the kind where we talk about what matters. That moment stayed with me, because what Marian said is something many of us feel, but few of us say. We are tired of repeating the same cycles, talking about others, rehashing the past, or comparing whose daughter-in-law is more distant. It is not that we do not care. It is that we care too deeply to keep hurting ourselves with pointless talk. When you reach a certain age, you begin to value silence more than shallow words. You find yourself listening less and observing more. You do not have the urge to interrupt, to fix, to explain. You simply want peace. And sometimes, the only way to protect that peace is to distance yourself from those who do not know how to sit in it with you. And that is okay. Some women will say, "She changed." Let them. Some friends will drift away. Let them. Because if a relationship depends on gossip to survive, it is not a friendship. It is a habit. And habits can be broken when they no longer feel good in your soul. You deserve conversations that feed you, not conversations that leave you questioning yourself. You deserve to share space with people who speak with kindness, with curiosity, with presence. Not just people who need to unload and walk away lighter, while you are left carrying the weight. And here is a truth we do not talk about enough. Your peace is more important than being polite. That does not mean we should be rude or cold. It just means we can be selective. If a certain gathering drains you, you can decline. If a certain person always brings negativity, you can take a step back. If a conversation turns toxic, you can choose silence. Not everything deserves a reaction. Not everyone earns access to your thoughts. It is not your job to entertain people who do not respect your energy. It is not your duty to sit through conversations that bring no joy or insight, only noise. You have lived too long and learned too much to keep pretending to enjoy what you no longer do. So, if you have been feeling a little more quiet lately, a little more inward, do not see that as a problem. See it as progress. You are becoming more you. You are finally hearing your own voice above all the others. And let me tell you, your own voice is enough. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is not speak, not argue, not explain, just smile and walk away. You do not owe your presence to people who only want your energy, but not your truth. You're allowed to choose depth over noise, meaning over motion, stillness over stimulation. And when you do, something beautiful happens. The people who truly love you begin to meet you there, in that stillness. They slow down with you. They speak softer. They listen more. And those are the people worth keeping close. 4. The quiet weight of comparison. There is a kind of pain we do not always talk about because it sneaks in quietly. It does not arrive loudly, like grief or loss. It shows up in smaller moments, like visiting a friend's home that feels a little too perfect, or hearing about someone else's grandkids and how often they visit, or scrolling past photos of smiling families and vacations on a phone screen. It is not that we are ungrateful for what we have. It is just that, sometimes, we feel the gap between what is and what we wish it could be. That quiet ache? That is comparison. And for many older women, it becomes heavier as time goes on. When we were younger, comparison might have been about clothes, careers, or whether our children were hitting milestones on time. We were conditioned to measure ourselves against others, our success, our homes, even our marriages. And we carried that mindset for years, always wondering if we were doing enough. But now, in these later years, the comparisons shift. It is not about who has the bigger house or the fancier car. It is about who still has their spouse, who still has their health, whose children live nearby, whose grandchildren visit often, who seems surrounded by love, and who sits alone more days than they would like to admit. And even if we know better, even if we tell ourselves not to compare, our hearts still feel it. Let me tell you about my friend Shirley. She is 72 and lives in a modest apartment. Her daughter lives across the country, and visits are rare. Shirley is not one to complain, but I remember once after church, she told me, "I love my life. I really do. But sometimes, When I see other women surrounded by family, I wonder if I did something wrong. She didn't. But comparison has a cruel way of turning other people's blessings into our personal doubts. And it is not just about family. Sometimes it is financial. You might visit an old friend and notice their kitchen has been remodeled, their clothes are new, their life looks a little shinier than yours. And even if they never brag, even if they are kind, you feel that little sting, that whisper of not enough. That whisper is a liar. Because here is what I have learned. Joy is not measured in square footage, or money, or how many family members sit around your table. Joy is something you build slowly, from the inside out. It is not about what you have, it is about what you hold in your heart. And the more we compare, the harder it becomes to feel grateful for what is already good. That is why many older women begin to withdraw from certain visits or gatherings. Not because they are jealous, not because they are bitter, but because they are protecting themselves. Because they know that too much time in the wrong room can leave them feeling small, and they have spent too many years building themselves back up to allow that again. There is no shame in that. You're allowed to take a step back when a space no longer feels healthy. You're allowed to stop visiting places or people that make you question your own worth. Because no one knows the full story of another woman's life. Not the grief behind the smiles, not the worry behind the laughter, not the loneliness behind the parties. Everyone carries something unseen, and what looks like a perfect life from the outside might feel very different when the door is closed. So if you have ever felt like you have less, remind yourself of this. You are more than enough. Your story matters. Your love matters. Your presence matters. You do not need to compete. You do not need to compare. And you certainly do not need to keep visiting places that leave you feeling anything less than whole. You're allowed to live quietly, modestly, freely. You're allowed to enjoy what you have, exactly as it is, without measuring it against someone else's chapter. And if someone else's life seems bigger, brighter, or louder than yours, let it be. Wish them well. Then come home to your own space, your own pace, and your own peace. Because at this age, real peace is not about proving anything. It is about letting go of the noise and saying, "This is my life, and it is enough." 5. Reclaiming joy in gentle solitude. There is something incredibly tender, almost sacred, about waking up one morning and realizing you enjoy your own company. You're not rushing. You're not waiting. You're not checking the clock for someone to call or knock. You're simply moving at your own pace, slow, quiet, steady. And somewhere in that rhythm, you feel peaceful. That feeling? That is not loneliness. That is solitude. And it is one of the most beautiful gifts of later life. For so long, many of us were defined by the people around us, our children, our spouses, our neighbors, our roles in the community. We were busy, often overstretched, constantly needed. And that life had its joy. There is something powerful about being the one people count on, but it also came with weight. Now, for the first time, many of us are discovering what it feels like to live without the constant pull of other people's needs. And while that might feel unfamiliar at first, it can also feel like freedom. Freedom to spend an entire day in silence, if that's what your heart needs. Freedom to read a book without interruption. Freedom to take a walk and stop whenever you please, not because someone else is tired, but because you want to admire the flowers. Freedom to light a candle and cook a small, beautiful meal just for yourself, not out of obligation, but out of love. This kind of freedom is not loud. It does not demand attention. It is soft. It is gentle. And it is yours. Let me tell you about my cousin Helen. She is 81, lives alone in a small house, and she says it is the happiest she has ever been. Every morning, She opens her curtains to let the sun in. She feeds the birds in her yard. She plays old records while making breakfast. And in the afternoons, she writes letters, sometimes to family, sometimes to friends, and sometimes to herself. Helen told me once, "I thought I would be lonely when the house got quiet, but I'm not. I've never listened to myself more. I've never known myself more." And I think that is the heart of it. Solitude, when chosen, not forced, becomes a space where we meet ourselves again. The younger version of us who used to dream, the middle-aged version who was too busy to rest, and the current version, wiser and more grounded, who simply wants life to be peaceful. There is so much we can do with this time. We can write our stories. We can learn something new, not for a career, but for the joy of it. We can pray, meditate, garden, paint, or sit quietly under a tree. We can savor each cup of tea like a ceremony. We can walk into the kitchen and bake, not because someone is coming over, but because the smell reminds us of our childhood, and no one needs to approve. Because this part of life is not about proving anymore. It is about being. And here is something important. Just because we choose solitude does not mean we are shutting the world out. It means we are creating space for what matters. We can still love people deeply, even if we do not see them every week. We can still have rich, meaningful friendships without constant visits or daily texts. We can still be connected, just more gently now. Solitude is not the absence of connection. It is the presence of self. And once you start enjoying your own company, once you stop waiting for someone else to fill your day, you begin to see that you are enough. Your thoughts, your memories, your joys, your routines, they are not small. They are sacred. This is your time to breathe deeper, to love yourself in ways you were too busy to before, to ask, what brings me peace? And then go toward that without apology. You have earned this season. It is okay to slow down. It is okay to protect your energy. It is okay to say, this day belongs to me. And when someone asks, don't you get lonely? You can smile and say, no, I've made peace with myself, and she's wonderful company. Meaningful connection, without the pressure, even as we learn to enjoy solitude, even as we grow more comfortable in our own company. The truth is, we still need people. We still need to laugh, to be heard, to share stories and moments with those we care about. But the difference now is that we want connection without the pressure. We want relationships that feel easy, not ones that make us feel like we need to clean the whole house, hide our feelings, or pretend to be more cheerful than we really are. We want conversations where we can take a breath, where we can speak slowly or not at all, and know that silence is welcome. That is what connection looks like in this season of life. Not constant, but kind. Many women I know have started doing something simple and brilliant. Instead of inviting people into their homes, they meet at a cafe. Or they go for short walks in the park. They sit on a bench in the sunshine, split a muffin, sip their tea, and talk about real things. Not the weather, not gossip, but life, love, faith, regret, gratitude. There is something special about meeting someone without the burden of entertaining them. You are just there, with each other. No cleaning beforehand, no dishes afterward, just presence. That's what we truly crave now, isn't it? Not more people, but more peaceful moments with the right people. And here is something every woman should know. You do not need to be available all the time to be a good friend. You do not need to open your door every time someone calls to prove you care. You do not need to host or please or perform. You only need to show up when it feels right, with your whole heart, not just your hospitality. So if you have been struggling with guilt, wondering if you are pulling away too much, or if others are judging your distance, please hear this. You are allowed to change how you connect. You are allowed to say, let's meet outside instead. You are allowed to say, I'm not up for a visit this week, but I'm thinking of you. You are allowed to love people from a gentle distance, without explanation or apology. Because relationships that are rooted in love will understand, and relationships that demand too much from you may not be as loving as they seem. At this stage, your health matters more. Your sleep, your routines, your energy, your peace, and no friendship, no visit is worth sacrificing all of that. Instead, lean into the rhythm that feels natural. Maybe it means fewer social obligations and more quiet mornings. Maybe it means only seeing people who uplift your spirit. Maybe it means calling someone once a month, not every day. That is enough. You are enough. Let's let go of the pressure to keep up. Let's stop feeling like we have to be the same woman we were 20 years ago. Let's stop trying to match someone else's social calendar. Instead, let's live in a way that matches our hearts. If you still enjoy visits, that's beautiful. If you do not, that's beautiful too. If you want to dance with your friends in the community center on Thursdays, do it. If you want to sit at home with your cat and your knitting needles, that is a worthy life too. What matters is that you choose your life with intention, that you protect your joy, that you listen to what your soul is asking for, and above all, that you know you do not have to be busy to be valuable. You do not have to be surrounded to be loved. You do not have to be social to be fulfilled. You just have to be you. That woman, the one who has lived, endured, laughed, cried, learned, and grown, she is already more than enough. So here is my wish for you. May your connections be light and loving. May your boundaries be honored. May your days be simple, quiet, and deeply yours. And may you always remember, you are not becoming less. You are becoming more yourself than ever before. Thank you for spending this time with me. If this message touched your heart, please share it with a sister, a friend, or someone you love. And remember, you are never alone on this journey. Here at Wise Elders Insight, we honor your wisdom, your choices, and your peace. Until next time, take good care of yourself